Working Cows Podcast, episode 345. This episode is brought to you by the Patreon supporters.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios. And this episode is brought to you by the generous supporters at Patreon. And some exciting things happening over at Patreon. I've gotten back into the swing of kicking out bonus content, pretty much caught up on the back catalog that I had amassed from September of 23 until now, and most of that is kicked out, and so we'll go back to weekly, Lord willing, weekly releases of bonus content there. Thank you for all those that stuck with me through that and hung in patiently, waiting that content to come more consistently. And also just in the process of developing some new swag for that. And so those who sign up new will be getting different swag than has been available in the past, and those who have been long-time supporters at the swag level will get those. And that is a series of cartoons, custom cartoons done for the Working Cows podcast with a character that we effectively call Rosie the Riveter, who looks a lot like my daughter's Rosie Jersey milk cow. And she is a cow dressed in the Rosie the Riveter outfit, and she's a working cow, so obviously, so that makes sense. So it'll be the preliminary run of that content is going to be, or that merchandise is going to be in the form of some exclusive mugs that you don't get unless you are a Patreon supporter or a advertiser as a thank you for your advertising. So what I wanted to do was kick out a bonus episode for you on a Friday here, and this bonus episode is going to be with Zack Smith. And the reason I'm doing this is because I am emceeing the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition's Soil Health Conference coming up here just next week as this is released. It is coming up on January 23rd and 24th, and Zack Smith is the second keynote speaker. The first one is Glenn Elzinga, and then Cooper Hibbard has a breakout session, as well as Dave Olila has a breakout session. So if you're a spur of the moment kind of person and you want to jump in a car or on a plane or whatever and get here for the Soil Health Conference, it's going to be a great conference, and I'm really looking forward to meeting all these people in person. Other than Dave Olila, I've never met Glenn Elzinga, Cooper Hibbard, or Zack Smith, and so the opportunity to meet them live and shake their hands is going to be great. And then we'll also be recording an episode of the Working Cows podcast there live at the conference as well. And so that'll be a special opportunity. I'm really looking forward to that. And so what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks is getting refamiliarized with all these guys by interviewing them again. And so you'll have episodes in the near future coming out with Glenn Elzinga and Cooper Hibbard. And today I'm releasing this episode with Zack Smith. And I'm going to talk to Zack about kind of where does the StockCropper stand as far as wide-scale adoption and its feasibility for broader scale adoption. Where does the StockCropper stand, and where is he at now? And just some of what he's learned about the different things that go into making the StockCropper work, from a technical perspective out on the landscape, and some of the ways, some of the feedback, what he's been seeing from a yield perspective, from a profitability perspective, all those things. So that's the kind of the nature of this conversation today, what I'd like to accomplish by talking to Zack today. So Zack, thanks again for joining me on the Working Cows podcast. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Clay. It's great to be here again. I think this is like our third or fourth time doing this now. So
I think this has got to be fourth, but yeah, no, I really do appreciate it. I told you before we started recording, I am a huge fan of what you've been doing over the last 4 years with the StockCropper and other things. and we'll talk about some of the pivots later. But first of all, I'd just like to talk to a little bit about, get a summary of what the fourth season with the StockCropper was like, and some of your takeaways from it.
So maybe real quick before, in case somebody's listening and hasn't heard the previous couple that we've done. So I've been working on this kind of alternative crop production system that we call StockCropping, and it was invented by myself and two other small farmers in the spring of 2020 that were trying to find a way out of the kind of the dead end of commodity production. Prices were really low at that point, and so we created this system of growing commodity crops in conjunction with livestock in the field at the same time, using the principles of strip intercropping, where we have strips of pasture and strips of row crops, and on the strips of pasture we parade multiple species of livestock with the invention that we came up to made that possible. We call it the world's first multi-species mobile grazing barn that we affectionately called the Cluster Cluck 5000. And since 2020, the first year of seeing if the crazy idea would work, we've been building and developing and testing several other different types of prototypes within the confines of this system, within other systems, to see what's possible with having the ability to autonomously move multiple species of livestock across the landscape. What are the benefits? How does it impact the livestock, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we've been working on. And so in season 4, there were a couple different objectives for this season. Number one, to continue on, we have a StockCropper experimental farm. It constitutes about 5 acres on my family's home farm just outside of Buffalo Center, Iowa. And the goal was we started that site in 2021. The first year we had it on a different site. In 2020, we wanted to be able to have more room. And so in 2021, we moved to this new site. So this was the third crop that we've had off of that site. And really, we were hoping to continue to see the benefits and quantifying what's possible with this system, being the second time now that we've been back to the same piece of ground as far as our rotation. I should explain that too if you haven't seen it. What the idea is that we have pasture strips that are rotated with the crop strips, and then at the end of the year we simply flip where the pasture was, we put the crops, and where the crops were, we put the pasture. And so the idea is it's kind of this self-feeding closed loop protein production system is how it works. So we have 2 different iterations of that. We have 10-foot wide cropping and pasture lanes. And then we have a 20-foot wide 20-foot configuration set up. And what that means is we have 2 different type of mobile grazing barns. We have one that is 20 feet wide or 18-foot wide to fit in between the rows of crops. And then the other one is just under 10 feet. And one of the barns has small ruminants and poultry. And then the other barn is set up with small ruminants like sheep and goats, then pigs, and then followed by chickens. And so we got off to I can't remember when we seeded for sure. It was a little bit slower start with a kind of a cool spring this year, at least initially. But we got off running, and eventually things took off, and we launched the barns in June like we normally did. But for the last 4 years of doing this, we've had just a ton of drought. Like we just cannot catch a break and break out of it. Nor we've been about 10 to 15 inches less on rainfall than what we normally get here. And so establishing pasture, getting regrowth after the system, we've never really seen what this system can do with normal Iowa rainfall. And I'm hopeful with the return of El Nino this winter and the fact that the patterns finally turn stormier, that we'll be able to really see what this system can do in 2024. But from an overall, the only failures that we really had, we lost our chickens before we ever got to the field. That was one thing that sucked. The batch that I get to put in the barns, we had, I don't know if it was mink or rats get in, and I couldn't get them stopped. It happened over about 3 or 4 nights. They took all my chicks out when they were about 4 weeks old. right before they were going to go into the barn. So our big barn with poultry in the back did not have any this year. We just had sheep and goats out fronts, followed by pigs in that one. The other one, we put some laying hens into that with sheep in front. And but despite kind of the weather challenges, things still worked out really well. We had a field day the end of August where we had, it was our biggest one yet. As far as attendance, I think close to 150 people showed up from, I think it was 5 different states across the Midwest. And beyond that, we had a lot of guests pop in, ad hoc. They just send me a message on Twitter. People from all over the country, even a couple different folks from overseas. We had a guy from France that came to see it, had seen it on Twitter from across the pond. And this was the first summer that we really had a lot of politicians show interest in the work that we were doing. So we had Secretary of Agriculture in the state of Iowa, Mike Nag, reached out and wanted to come see it. Senator Joni Ernst was here in, I think, late July, early August. And just some really positive interactions where, I think those type of folks are, getting challenged to be more open, maybe to solutions like what we're putting forward. And so they were both really intrigued and impressed what a couple of farmers themselves, it's not like this is some concept coming out of, California. This is, corn and soybean growers that came up with this kind of radical idea that substantially increases diversity on an acre versus what the standard of corn and soybean production is, here. And so, but at the end of the day, the system that we have, where we grow corn in between the livestock, where a lot of people are interested in, like, well, how does the corn yield in that setup? Because we do get an advantage. There's a boost in corn yield from the fact that we have all of the edge rows that pop up, and the fact that the pasture in these alternating 10 or 20 foot strips is shorter. And so it gives the outside row of corn more sunlight. You get a substantial yield pop there, which raises all ships. And so this year we had the best corn that we've ever had, despite only having about 18 or 19 inches of rain on our site this year. We had our 4-row lane averaged 325 bushels an acre of corn, and our 8-row lane of corn in between the pasture had a output of 305 bushels an acre on the 8-row. And that was even a little bit low, I think, because we had some damage from not getting, we missed a row when we were spraying stuff. And so we had some weed competition on our best row. And so I think our 8-row stuff looked fantastic at our field day. People were really kind of astounded by, what's possible when you change arrangement on how much, and those yields would compare roughly to 230 to 240 bushel on our static normal production acres. So a lot of positive things came out, from another year of doing this. And it just kind of further solidifies that if the powers that be would want a regenerative, scalable system to happen, I think we're laying the groundwork on what that could potentially look like, and proving that it is possible when you think outside of the box. So,
yeah, no, that's awesome. Really appreciate that. So just so I understand, is it basically a 2-year rotation, or how many years from when the StockCropper is in one lane to when it's back in that exact same lane?
Yeah. So, it's hard to describe. I always struggle describing what it is over the podcast forum. It's easier with video. But essentially what we do is we set up a racetrack pattern for the barns to go through. And so the plot that we have is about 750 feet long. And what that gives us is about 30 to 40 grazing days to move through that strip. And we move through the first strip, and then we move over either 20 or 40 feet around the next block of corn to the next block of pasture. We travel back down, and then we start the cycle over a second time, usually in September or late August, and we make another circuit with the animals. And when the bigger the animals get, the more that we speed up the barn. So we'll, instead of doing 3 moves a day, we'll do 4 moves a day because of just the fact they need more forage, or like in the case of pigs, they can be more destructive if they're sitting in one spot at a time. And so, but we've done all the math to kind of figure out what that circuit looks like. But essentially what we're doing is, our 20-foot barn only operates on about 3/4 of an acre a year of pasture, and kicks out 10 hogs, 8 lambs or goat kids or whatever you want to raise in front, and then 2 turns of 150 chickens a piece, so 300 chickens. So it's incredibly productive on just 3/4 of them. It's a lot of food for 3/4 of an acre protein.
No doubt. Yeah. No. So how many years before the StockCropper in the way you have it running?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Missed the question. So then at the end of the year, then we simply, where the animals went in the pasture, I come back in and I strip till all my conventional acres. So I come and I strip till into that pasture. And then the next year we grow the corn or the beans or whatever feed stuff crop we want to grow, back on that space. We put the row crop there, and that way the row crop is able to take up all the wonderful diverse nutrients and the biology from the gut biome of 3 or 4 different critters that they've laid down. And so that's the idea is that we substantially minimize input needs, so the only real thing I'm adding to the crop is some additional nitrogen that we don't produce probably enough nitrogen from the manure that we're laying out to be able to achieve kind of the maximum yield levels that we're going after in between. But other than that, our site has not gotten any dry, conventional synthetic fertilizer other than additional nitrogen on the corn in the last, since 2020 or 2019, last time we had stuff there, and our yields keep going up. And so it's every other year the cluster cluck sees the chunk of ground.
Gotcha. And so now you're coming back to, this would have been the second year on some land that had been planted into corn or soybeans after the cluster cluck. It would have been the second year that's happened in some of that.
Correct. Yes.
And so you were talking about your normal production is it like 230 to 240 bushels? Is that right?
Yeah, our range on the farm was real variable. It was all dependent on where rainfall was this year, but our field averages were anywhere from like 210 to just over 250 this year on our conventional acres.
Right. And then the cluster cluck acres were 305 to 325.
Yeah, correct.
And so you're talking 100 to or 70
80 to 100, 70 to 100 bushel better. Versus normal, production. Yeah. And so and so people always focus on that when they talk numbers with me. Well, it's really only half of that, right? So it's only 160 bushel corn because, you're not producing anything in between. And I'm like, well, I am producing something in between. I'm producing this really high value protein that I can market at a premium because it's grown in a way that is attractive to consumers who are willing to pay a premium for transparency of a system like this that's incredibly low carbon, has a super low carbon footprint and all of the other things that help differentiate it. So I'll tell people right now, if you're listening to this saying this, there's no way this works. There's no way this works with conventional commodity meat pricing. That's absolutely right. But if you use USDA average pasture raised pricing, the profitability of this system is with the fact that we stack enterprises and have 3 or 4 different enterprises at one time in a spot. That's what really makes the numbers and the profitability of the system work.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what USDA average pasture prices are, but I know people that are selling beef on average for $15 a pound. So, I mean, that doesn't take very long to really make it work.
And I like living out here in rural areas, I think there's a lot of people that look at what we're working on and don't think that it's relevant because they're only getting X for a pound of beef but you have to have a differentiated story in order to do that. And that's the thing I think that's disruptive about what we're doing is we're killing a lot of birds with one stone, so to speak, and being able to make those claims, and it's been working.
Right. So. And the motive is a regenerative motive. The motive is a soil health motive. You are killing all of the stones of the soil health principles in one deal. I mean, you're integrating livestock, you're having diversity, you are, increasing the cover, reducing the tillage, all those things are bang, 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 bang. They're right there, and so, I mean, it's all those things. It checks all those boxes. And so it becomes even more marketable in that regard, I would think.
Yeah. The livestock piece, so I guess now there's 6, it's of regenerative agriculture or soil health, context being the new one that's been added. But, kind of the missing unicorn that when I go and I pitch this to people is like, nobody has found out a way to really incorporate livestock at scale back on the landscape. Surely in the beef industry, that's a lot simpler with pasture. It's more of a natural fit. But as far as doing pasture raised hogs, pasture raised chicken, some of those things at scale, that's really where we close the loop on that piece. And then the fact that the system is set up really to be what makes us different from some other people that are in this space is that we've designed not only a gizmo or contraption to make this happen in the cluster cluck, but we've created this system that is self-sustaining and self-feeding, where we're not growing the corn or whatever cash crop we have to turn into ethanol. We're using the idea is to turn it into a feed stuff to then feed back to the animals. So it's all super hyper local instead of trucking stuff all over the place. This is a concept where a farmer could be sovereign in a lot of ways of kind of what we used to do in walking the value off the farm in the form of protein. And that's really what we've been working on the last couple of years.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that is probably undersold somewhat is the fact that you are doing this integration in the growing season. Like even if livestock is integrated onto crop ground, generally it's in the dormant season. We're grazing corn stalks or something like that. And we count that as livestock integration, which it is, and it's better than nothing. But we're doing this you are doing this during the growing season. And I think that's probably another step better than just dormant season livestock integration.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing where I really feel that we differentiated, because there's a ton of livestock integration in the state of Iowa now. You have hog manure, they come out and you slug it on the end of October, end of November. It sits there with nothing growing in it. It's subject to loss. If you have dry springs, probably very little environmental impact from that because you get lucky. But when we get the wet springs, the manure moves, it ends up in the river, it ends up in the Gulf, and we have all these negative externalities that come with that. And with our system, like the animals are applying it right to the ground, and in the ground, I have images where you can literally see the uptake and the recovery of the pasture, like in a very linear pattern across. So you can literally see the roots of the pasture regenerating, hitting that nitrogen, sucking it up, putting it in an organic form that's now stable, and then it'll slowly, release the next year over time back into the system. And that's a lot different than the way the conventional manure acre is treated in Iowa in my own context here. So
right, and if you have to truck the manure, right, you're paying, or pump the manure or whatever, you're paying for that energy to pump it or truck it and spread it. And so here the livestock are doing that, and the barns that I'm aware of, the stock cropping that I'm aware of, is solar powered. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah, we've got a couple panels on top and a couple batteries on board, and it's either we have one barn that's powered by a winch that we just hit a button and the barn moves itself ahead on a winch, and the other one has electric motors and the ability to GPS steer itself down a prescribed path. And so yeah, we don't require any diesel fuel to move the manure. It's just the animals walking themselves across with the power of the sun, power in the contraption.
And this episode is brought to you by the generous supporters at Patreon, and some exciting things happening over at Patreon. I've gotten back into the swing of kicking out bonus content, pretty much caught up on the back catalog that I had amassed from September of 23 until now, and most of that is kicked out, and so we'll go back to weekly, Lord willing, weekly releases of bonus content there. Thank you for all those that stuck with me through that and hung in patiently, waiting that content to come more consistently. And also just in the process of developing some new swag for that. And so those who sign up new will be getting different swag than has been available in the past, and those who have been long-time supporters at the swag level will get those. And that is a series of custom cartoons done for the Working Cows podcast with a character that we effectively call Rosie the Riveter, who looks a lot like my daughter's Rosie Jersey milk cow. And she is a cow dressed in the Rosie the Riveter outfit, and she's a working cow, so obviously, so that makes sense. So it'll be the preliminary run of that content is going to be, or that merchandise is going to be in the form of some exclusive mugs that you don't get unless you are a Patreon supporter or a advertiser as a thank you for your advertising. So you were saying that you can see the uptake happening. Is that what you're saying there is like you can see where we were 30 days ago and you can see this is better than it is where we were 10 days ago? Is that what you're referring to?
What I'm referring to is so there's a big concern with animal manures and timing and like having them not move off site and so with our system, you can actually see if you put a drone up over top of our plot, you can see as time goes on and we get a rainfall, when that nitrogen the animals put on in their urine and their feces, you can actually see the uptake into the pasture because the pasture becomes nice and dark green where the barn hasn't been and we haven't fertilized with excess nitrogen. It's a lighter shade of green where the barn has not gone yet. And so that recovery, you can visually see the environmental benefit of having something there to hold it versus just growing all your pigs or chickens in a barn, scooping the crap up and going out and spreading it or sucking the stuff out of the pit or the lagoon and then going out and putting it onto a lifeless profile at the end when it's convenient for after the crop is being off. We're essentially using arrangement to be able to spread manure during the growing season so that it can be taken up and be held in a stable form over winter.
Right, because another problem, it moves in at least 2, if not 3 directions. It volatilizes, right? When it's spread in the dormant season, a lot of it volatilizes. Or it rains and it goes down, or it rains and it runs off. So there's the 3 directions depending on how you count it, and it goes somewhere where you don't want it when it moves in those ways. And so here is a way to get it on the ground in a way that the ground can use it when it's there and benefit for long term, not just that one growing season, but into the
Correct.
future as well.
Yeah, the idea is that we want to be feeding the soil to have this continuous release through increased microbiology, and that all comes from we're 10xing the obvious amounts of biodiversity on the farm right off the get-go, and from the use of having with our pasture mixes, we've got 5 or 6 different species that we're putting out with different plants with different types of roots that have different positive attributes to the soil, and then you couple that with 3 or 4 different micro gut biomes of livestock on top of that, it's a substantial amount of more diversity than what we have than just growing corn, and that's it. And that's all
right.
That field sees for the year. And we're making use of the thing I don't talk about enough. We make such poor solar use of energy in a state like Iowa, or a lot of the Corn Belt, where, we've had a warm winter. We've had the ability to photosynthesize for the last 9 months here in northern Iowa. But 95% of the ground only takes, really only utilizes that about 3.5 months out of the year to grow, the annual crops we do, and then everything sits barren. And so in a system like this, you keep feeding that microbiology out throughout the winter. It's got a food source, like you just keep supercharging that system. And when you think about it from a systems approach and feeding biology, those are the things that really help set yourself up for a system like this to really be a force to be reckoned with, in my opinion.
Right. Yep. No doubt. Yeah, it's like I said, I love what you're doing. It's so exciting to me. I would love to see it at scale. And I've said this probably on every episode you and I have done together, but I'd love to see the StockCropper integrated onto every acre of row crop land in America. And I know that that's a moonshot goal, but that is, I just think that there are very few, if any, acres that couldn't benefit from something like this. So when we talk about a 70 to 100 or whatever that number was yield advantage on the stock cropping acres, and I know everything it depends on all these other variables, but was that like a $400 to $600 per acre revenue advantage this year?
Yeah. I mean, if you I guess the price of corn now is locally here about $4.50, but with there are opportunities to sell it for $6, and so if you got that price, you can just take that multiplier by whatever 70 to 100, $400 to $600 an acre,
right?
So
so that's worth doing. and then
it doesn't suck, and then you have the benefit of the livestock,
right,
in between.
And the ability to market the livestock, right? I mean, those are animals, as you said, we're walking the farm, we're walking the value off the farm like we used to. Back in the day, every farm, probably most every farm, was a farmer feeder type operation where there was some livestock there, at least in a barn. Well, when corn goes crazy and soybeans go crazy as far as price, a lot of those feedlots get turned into row crop acres and they don't come back generally. And so I think that a lot of that has gone away, and the food supply chain has become vertically integrated to the point that a lot of them aren't, they're locked up in barns, and there are massive swaths of land surrounding those barns that are, all of that feed is coming to the barn. And so there's all these different cascading and compounding effects, I would say, in a negative direction that the StockCropper helps to alleviate.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Is that an accurate assessment? I've spent a total of 1 week in Iowa in my life, maybe not even that, 4 days, I think, actually. So
it's close. But the reality is, on the ground in Iowa right now, and it's been going on for a long time, but I know we've talked about it before. There is, the system of growing commodities, whether it's pork or poultry or corn and beans, it's a reductive system in the fact that it requires fewer and fewer participants, more consolidation. That's going to ramp up. And one of the things I like about this system, where it's not hoping for your neighbors to die and not have a son or a daughter willing to come back, like this is a system where maybe it's resilient enough on its own economically that you look forward to having neighbors, and you work together with neighbors to do work the way it used to be. You don't look at neighbors as a threat or enemy. They become necessary. And, but yeah, we're talking about a utopian future. And I'm also a grown up and understand that those things are, what we're doing is a moonshot. And that's been one of the realities that I've had to, the first year we did it, we thought we were going to change the world. And then you figure out,
the world doesn't want to be changed.
The world doesn't want to, and it's really, really damn hard to do that. And so I definitely understand that, when you say it, you'd love to see it on every acre. So would I, but there's 143,000 reasons why that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And part of that, and there's definitely part of that is by design, by the powers that be, in my opinion.
100%.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. There's, I've talked about profit motives on other episodes. There are profit motives in the world that will ensure that those things don't happen very quickly. Yeah, I totally agree. But just for example, I was in line behind this lady at an organic grocer the other day, and she was checking out, and I just peeked at the chicken that she had going across the scanner. One chicken, $32. It was a pasture raised chicken. So you're talking 300 chickens on a quarter acre of land at whatever you want to do. Take half of that. Say it was marked up 100% by the retailer. $15 a piece times 300. That's $4,500 on a quarter acre of land. We are compounding and cascading negatively with a commodity system, and we're compounding and cascading positively with the stock cropping system. And so, it's not that it can't work. It's just that you have to find the right people who want it to work to invest the money to get it off the ground. That's really the reality of the situation as we face it right now.
Yeah. And I think, so does that mean that everyone is going to buy $32 chickens in the future? No, absolutely not. Okay. Because it just, most families, can't afford something like that. But, what will happen, in my opinion, if this is going to take off, is that we could become a sustainable scaled thing for that segment of the market. And that could still be a significant thing for people who are weird asses like me and are willing to do things a little bit differently. I think there's a viable lane. And so, maybe it's not every farm in the Corn Belt, but maybe there's some, or there's networks of, stock croppers around urban areas where, they're positioned strategically to be close to the consumer. So the consumer, if they want to even come out to the farm, it's, you've got your network of producers right around the urban, and you kind of flip the narrative where you invite people to come out rather than put up stay out, no trespassing signs, on the farm. And, and that way you're also close. You could, for processing facilities that would have to, they'd have to come from somewhere. Cause right now, the reason that this is not a scalable thing is there's just nowhere to, what do you do if you have 9,000 chickens on 80 acres? Where do you take those to get processed? There's 2 processors or 3 processors that are legit in the whole state of Iowa where they've got the certifications right now. So they're just, the infrastructure is not there. It's been, it's gone away, and it's gone to the way of the vertical integrators. And that's one of the, the biggest challenges that something like this faces. But make no mistake, there are people out there paying $32 for a chicken, or, $1,000 for a hog, so,
or $4,000 for a beef.
Yeah. 100%.
The reason it's $32 right now is because the supply doesn't exist for it to be cheaper. It's a supply and demand issue. And so do you need $15 a chicken, or do you need $20 a chicken to make the StockCropper work financially? Probably not. Well,
so it all depends. Right now with the inflated costs of being a startup and not producing things at scale, 15 is actually I think the dollar amount that I have in my spreadsheet for what the chickens would go for. I think I've got them at $3 a pound, if I remember right, for a 5-pound broiler. So, so those numbers work as far, and if you're successful with that and you have a market with they're very profitable, to the tune of, I think, I got to refresh myself in my mind from the calculator that I've got up, but I think it's somewhere between the estimates on what we've been able to produce. It's I think between $2,000 to $3,000 an acre of net profitability. That's after paying for the barn, all the rigmarole. Assuming you have a home for the meat to go and a market for that, that's the type of return back to the farm.
Right, with meat prices that are at market rate for that commodity. I know commodity is the wrong word, but for that commodity, you're at market rate for the lamb, pork, chicken, goats produce the way that you're producing them.
Right.
So
yeah. And the key is though, there's so much nonsense in these markets, as far as labeling. And that's what's powerful, I think, about, and it's not that there's not other people that aren't doing unique things that are truly regenerative. There are, but I think from a scalable, repeatable level, I think that's what makes, where if we could get this thing going, we could actually have a brand where if you saw the term StockCropper meats, you would know exactly and it would be similar to like a Nyman ranch where,
Mm-hmm.
it would be a strict protocol. These are the standards that have to be followed so that the consumer would have a consistent experience all the time.
Yeah. Yep. No, very good. And I guess that kind of helps us pivot well to your pivot with the StockCropper. Where are you moving your focus for the time being as you seek to continue to bring this thing to market?
Yeah. So, the last piece that we talked about has weighed heavily on me. There's a ton of people that reach out, all throughout the year that are interested in the bigger system. But like I said, the realization that there's a lot of headwinds against something like that scaling up quickly. I still think we have a lot of really unique things with the concepts. And that was one of the things that when we first came up with the idea, it's like, this may not go, but some of the concepts and things that we've learned very well could be transferable to other spaces that could still have a lot of value. And so, one of the, instead of like with the idea of trying to feed the world, I've really started to coalesce around the idea of just helping feed a family. Right. And so there's lots of people that are wanting to get out of the cities for a lot of good reasons after everything that's happened in the last, couple of years. People a lot more interested in sovereignty, worried about, government control of things, and or just wanting to get healthier and be, more in connection where their food came from after, the stuff that happened, during COVID, or, the threat of war and like scarcity if, what happens if it really hit the fan. And so that's where, I've really pivoted to focus on, at least I think there's more of a business case for me to focus on helping build devices for livestock for personal consumption. So, instead of, if somebody has an acreage, instead of having to build a barn or a Morton shed to contain something in, why don't we just make a nice little cluster cluck for your family to have poultry in, or, maybe it's a combination like a StockCropper, a cluster cluck nano, where we have some lamb out front and poultry in the back. Or, maybe we make one where you can have all three and, produce a ton of protein, have protein sovereignty on your own property, and then help people figure out how to do that. Right. Because, that's a whole nother element too, but it's a heck of a lot easier to solve the processing issue when you can inform and educate people what that might look like for themselves. It's not an overcoming task to process 25 chickens on a Saturday afternoon, but you can put a hell of a lot of protein in your freezer for, quite a while with a family of four to do that. And so, the other piece I feel like the cluster clucks really alleviate for people is the fact that, you don't need fences with this system, but everything is contained. It's saleable, so if it doesn't work out, you can ship it down the road to somebody else. You can't do that with a barn. And, the biggest thing, like if somebody's ever had like a chicken tractor, they've raised their own broilers, right? It's a pain in the butt to go out and have to yank that thing. It sounds great when you watch the Joel Salatin video. That's the idea, is that we want to make devices for people to grow their own protein on their place, but they can still go to the lake on the weekend and the barns take care of themselves, either move themselves or feed and water themselves. That's one of the pivots. It's not that we're going away from the other stuff. We're still, for 2024, we're still going to have our bigger barns and our system continue to be demonstrated. I think I mentioned this in the last one, but we've been filmed by Hollywood with our story over the last couple of years, and the sequel to the movie Food Inc. Food Inc. 2 is coming out in April. And our storyline is going to be involved, or is part of that movie. We actually have a pretty substantial part as a potential kind of regenerative solution that is offered up in the film. And so I definitely want to have all the things that we've been working on available for showcase this summer on the increased eyeballs and attention we may get from that, or being included in that as well. So
yeah, very cool. So you've gone more to the homestead, or you are also working to produce something for the homestead family, basically. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, that's the nuts and bolts of it. Correct.
Right. And how is that? What is that system look like? How does it operate? What does it produce? Some of those things.
Yeah. So the first one, the first prototype that we built last year, we call it the Cluster Cluck Pico, which is the smallest cluster cluck we've made. We've made anything from, this one is 7.5 feet by 7.5 feet. And the idea with that one is to give a family of 4 or 5 protein sovereignty in a backyard. So the ability to put in, if you want to do just egg layers, you could have probably 12 to 15 hens comfortably in that space. Comes with a nesting box, all the things that you need to have for that. Or you could put it into, say, broiler production. 25 to 40 broilers could fit in that space, depending on what your needs or wants were. The barn is built for convenience and ease of use. So everything is choreable from the outside. You don't have to climb in this thing and get covered with, chicken crap. The idea was I wanted to make this for the working mom in stilettos. When their kids don't do the chores in the morning, they have to go out and do that. They can still do it and get to work and not smell like they came from a farm. That was the mindset that I had. And so you're able to water it, fill the feeder by just dumping your feed bag through the outside, and it goes in through a chute to fill the feeder itself. And then the eggs are accessible from just opening a flap that sticks out the outside of the barn. And the best feature of it is the fact that it moves itself autonomously through an app where you just set up, you point the barn in the direction you want it to go. It locks in a straight line mechanically, and then the computer program and the solar panels and the batteries on board the computer will move itself however many times a day you want the barn to move. And so it moves incredibly slowly. We've built in what we call the chicken fluffer into that, which is a system. If you've ever been around chicken tractors, when you move the tractors, especially broilers, are really stupid. They sit there in a pile. They don't move. You end up running them over. You break a leg, and now you've got problems. And so we put in technology that's all automated to help avoid those problems with it. And we've really tried to take all the pain points out of what we've learned in the system of moving livestock and make something that makes people having livestock a very non-impact thing, but their kids can still be around it. You're able to climb in the thing. It catches its own rainwater like our other barns do. That's one feature we hadn't talked about yet, but all of our barns collect their own rainwater to fill the waters on board with the barn itself. And this one is not autonomous to the point where it's not like an autonomous lawnmower, where you put up like a guide wire around the outside perimeter so it bounces just back and forth. We haven't put that level of technology in, and nor do I know if I want to, from the complexity those systems bring to the table from a troubleshooting standpoint. I want this device to have technology, but just the minimal amount possible, because anytime you put any more systems in, you just introduce the capacity for problems. And so this system simply has a single drive wheel, motor, and actuator that when the barn moves, it puts all the weight on the front wheel. It picks itself up, moves itself ahead 8 feet, sets itself back down, and then the animals are allowed to graze on the fresh grass or whatever your situation is. And so that's the example of like what a poultry one would look. But I've got ideas and concepts for pig mobiles, pig cluster clucks only, or the combination. The StockCropper Nano that we've done is a dual species where we've done sheep out front and poultry in the back, but you could do sheep in the front and hogs out back. There's lots of different configurations that we could set up for people to be able to use it. So,
given that it's still a small scale production, we recognize costs will be high, but do you have an idea what the Pico would cost to get to somebody's yard?
I don't have, we're in the process of redesigning a little bit of stuff now. And so what I'll say is that it's going to be more expensive than going to Lowe's and building a Joel salad and chicken coop, which is probably going to be $600 to $800 is what that cost is. But this thing is going to be it's going to be built to last. So it's steel construction. Everything we do is heavy duty because we look at it as something that's, we want it to last 20 to 25 years. That's kind of the engineering shelf life we're going for here. And so I guess what I'll say is it's going to be an investment to do it. But I think it's been amazing how many people I've shown it to, and they're like, I want one. Mm-hmm. And I've told them kind of my rough cost targets, and like, yeah, that's no problem.
Right.
So I think as long as it works and and those markets will definitely be more niche. It'll probably be more upper end, acreage, upper middle class to fairly well-to-do folks. But we've had a lot of initial interest, at least in the poultry one especially, and so that's what we're trying to redesign and get one of those versions redone by spring here and have out to test and hopefully launch and actually start taking orders, because that will be our the way it looks like right now, probably our first actual saleable product out of StockCropper. So.
Sure. Don't sell yourself short. The Ego 42-inch to 52-inch lawnmower right now, $7,000 to $9,000 for a battery operated riding lawnmower. So I wouldn't get too worried about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And all that does is mow grass. And
right.
And one of these things could go out and clip your grass and make protein for you. And I think, I think more people are starting to think that way as far as, does it make sense to have a couple acres of grass, or, some of these 5-acre lots, what if you put in pasture and turn something like this loose, and, maybe you grow way more protein than what you need, but it brings people together in the community of sharing meat. Your neighbors come together and maybe you butcher together, and that whole idea. So,
yeah, and you don't have to charge your neighbor $32 for a chicken if they'll come help you butcher, right? I mean, you can send them home with a few in payment for helping you butcher. So,
yeah, 100%.
Right.
So,
yep, very good. And last on my list of things I wanted to talk to you about today was the fact that you will be, in a couple of days from the release of this episode, you will be speaking at the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition's Soil Health Conference in Rapid City, South Dakota on January 23rd. So want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just tell me what you're thinking as far as that.
Oh, yeah. That was your cue to me to say something intelligent. Okay. Oh, you'd think I'd have this podcast thing figured out better by now. But so I got invited out from their group. I think it was, I don't know when it was early last August. And I'm really excited to come there because it's been a convention I've never been to before, or a conference that I've never been to before, but I've ingested a lot of YouTube content from people that have been at that conference. And I know quite a few people on the soil health circuit that have been there. So it's an honor to be asked. And I'm coming out to kind of share my story, kind of similar to what I've talked about today, but there'll be more. And I've been building a slide deck actually the last couple of days for it and updating it, and kind of talking through the whole spectrum of what I've learned, how we've developed it. Kind of my previous background being in the big ag space, and the transition from kind of giving all that up to kind of focus on a kind of a completely different path. And then, kind of what I see coming down the path in the future in this space too, is kind of the theme of the talk that I'm putting together for that conference. So.
Yeah, very good. If anything is very clear to me, it's that you think deeply about these things and you think long-term and big picture about these things. And so I think that's an exciting opportunity to hear it from you as well. And as I understand it, you and I and Glenn Elzinga and Cooper Hibbard will all be part of a panel discussion on the 24th, which would be the last day of the conference, January 24th, and it will be essentially a live recording of the Working Cows podcast. So that'll be a fun little event as well that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And I ask you to be gentle to me and throw me some softballs every once in a while. So
I'll do my best. Yeah. Zack, I will have links in the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/345, workingcows.net/345, links in the show notes page to your Twitter and to your YouTube channel. Anything else that you would like there?
No, those are probably the best ways to consume. If you want to visually see what we've done, YouTube is by far the best place to go. I will say I've been lax in the last couple months since harvest as far as putting out much content, but there's plenty of there from the last 4 years if you want to see all the different types of contraptions and like what the actual system looks like. Go check out YouTube.
Very good, very good. Zack, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks. Great to have number 4 under the belt with you, Clay. Appreciate it.
As always, very good stuff there with Zack. And Zack has a pretty interesting talk planned for the Soil Health Conference, and Glenn as well. Really enjoyed the conversation I was able to have with Glenn, getting ready to introduce him from an MC perspective. And so look forward to that episode coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. Probably won't be the next episode. In fact, it won't be the next episode you hear. I'm going to talk to Adam Boyd, and this is some content that we are producing in conjunction with Understanding Ag. And Adam's got a fascinating story, 10 generations on the same plot of land. Of course, it's ebbed and flowed over time as far as how much acreage they're actually influencing with their management, but 10 generations, and he's got quite the story to tell as far as his transition into applying the 6 principles, the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship, and the 4 ecosystem processes. So he's got quite a story to tell, and I'm really excited to share that with you, coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.